You won't believe what happened to James Carter just 3 months after he moved into Maplewood Heights, a peaceful neighborhood, or so he thought. One morning, James walks outside to find his backyard gate chained up and locked tight with a shiny new padlock. No warning, no note, except for a small scrap taped to the post claiming the HOA now controls that area. And just like that, James's dog Max was trapped inside without food or water. Yeah, that happened. James rattled the chain, key useless in hand, frustration bubbling up. Then he hears a voice behind him. It's his neighbor, Mr. Thompson, looking sympathetic but also a little wary. "That's Karen for you," he says, shaking his head. Karen Bell, the newly elected HOA president, had apparently taken it upon herself to install that lock. Since stepping into power last month, Karen's been on a control freak mission, and now she was literally locking people out of their own yards. See, James had bought the house expecting a quiet, friendly neighborhood. The realtor assured him the HOA was hands-off, just keeping property values stable. But no one mentioned the kind of person Karen was, a 52-year-old woman who treated rules like gospel and wielded them like weapons. Within weeks, James had received emails about his grass being too tall and notices about garbage cans left out too long. But this, locking his gate, that crossed every line. James was furious, but smart enough not to cut the lock. That would have played right into Karen's hands. Property damage equals fines, and she was itching for reasons to penalize neighbors. With help from Mr. Thompson, James hopped the fence just long enough to feed Max and make sure he was okay. But this was just the beginning. The very next day, James marched over to Karen's house. You could spot it easily. Manicured lawn, symmetrical shrubs, and a mailbox so polished it practically shone. Karen answered the door, cardigan in place despite the heat, and greeted him with a frosty, "Mr. Carter, I assume this is about your gate." James kept his cool but was firm. "Karen, you put a lock on my private property without my permission. That's trespassing." She smiled that smug smile, then dropped the HOA bylaw bomb, something about all exterior structures visible from community areas being under HOA control, including gates facing the street. James stared in disbelief. "That's not how property law works. My deed says the gate's mine, not the community's." Karen shot back. "Bylaws were established before you moved in. You agreed to follow them when you bought your home." Then, with cold finality, she told him the lock stays until he submits modification forms and gets approval. And just like that, the door shut in his face. Walking home, James felt the weight of it all. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was expanding her empire, and neighbors were too scared to stand up. But then, things took a turn. Mrs. Lee, the sweet elderly woman next door who spent mornings tending her roses, quietly approached James later that day. "I saw Karen install the lock," she whispered, pulling out her phone. The video was crystal clear. Karen creeping onto James's property early in the morning, locking the gate with that heavy chain. Mrs. Lee said, "I thought you might need this." Her voice had a tinge of defiance now. It was time someone put a stop to Karen. Armed with video evidence and copies of his property deed, James contacted the HOA board secretary, Mr. Ellis, a reasonable man clearly uncomfortable with Karen's tactics. James also called the non-emergency police line to report trespassing and tampering. When Officer Ramirez arrived, he watched the video and reviewed the deed. "This is clear cut," he said. "Karen had no right to do this." James decided to press charges. Hours later, police cruisers rolled up to Karen's immaculate home. Neighbors gathered, curiosity buzzing. Karen protested loudly, "I'm the HOA president. I was enforcing bylaws." But Officer Ramirez stayed calm, reading her rights as he slapped handcuffs on her wrists for criminal trespass and property tampering. The stunned crowd watched as Karen was escorted away, her protests fading. The HOA board quickly convened and unanimously removed Karen as president. 3 days later, James got a call from the district attorney. Karen was charged not only with trespass and tampering, but also falsifying HOA documents. Turns out, she'd been doctoring bylaws to justify her crusade against neighbors. The kicker? A county survey found Karen's pristine white fence actually encroached 2 feet onto community green space, the very thing she'd spent years policing others about. She was ordered to remove it at her own expense, a bill topping $8,000. Witnesses say her face turned ghostly pale when she heard the news, signing her probation papers. So, here's the real question. Was Karen a power-hungry bully abusing HOA rules, or just someone trying to keep her community in line? And where's the line between neighborhood order and personal freedom? What do you think? Should James have handled it differently? Have you ever dealt with an overbearing HOA? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your story. If you liked this story, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to hear more wild, real-life neighborhood dramas. Until next time, stay sharp and stand your ground. You never know when you might need to.